Hello again, geometry students of Chatfield High School. We're continuing on with circles today as we're talking about section 10.4, which is our last section before the quiz. So your next activity is going to be to do another online quiz over everything we've done with circles so far. It'll be 10.1 through 10.4 will be on the quiz that we have the next time this class meets. All right, so this section is talking about inscribed angles in the circle. And back in 10.1, when we did all the vocabulary, we talked about what it meant to be an inscribed angle. So an inscribed angle is angle B here, where you see the angle falls on the circle and it's created by drawing chord AB and chord BC. Angle O was what we called a central angle. That was what we worked with 10.2, where the angle was in the center. An inscribed angle now talks about the fact that angle B is on the circle, and that's an inscribed angle. So we only have one rule involving inscribed angles, and it's going to be very similar to what we did with central angles, where the inscribed angle is going to be half the measure of the arc in degrees. So therefore, if we look at the picture you see here, where you have this arc AC marked in red, well, we know that this angle O is going to have the same measure as arc AC. So if we pick a number, say 100 degrees, if arc AC was 100 degrees of the circle, this would be a 100-degree angle. Well, an inscribed angle is always half the arc it cuts. So therefore, if this is a 100-degree arc, angle B is 50 degrees. Very simple calculation. So let's look at a couple of examples of how you're going to see inscribed angles applied. This first one is a simple example where it's asking you to find what is angle question mark. Well, if we look, angle question mark, which is angle E, is these two chords here. So the first thing we have to do is identify the arc that is cut by the chords. That would be this arc here. That arc is from point Z to point X. That's the arc that is cut by angle ZEX. So we have two separate arc measurements there. Arc ZY is 70, arc XY is 100. So therefore, the total arc length must be 170 degrees. So in order to find the measure of angle question mark, well, the measure of angle question mark is going to be half the arc it cuts, so it is 85 degrees. The pictures are going to be a little bit more visibly challenging, more than the work is going to be challenging. The work here is very simple math. You added 100 plus 70 and divided by 2. The math is simple. The rule is simple. An inscribed angle measures half the arc it creates. The challenge is going to be looking at the pictures and figuring out which arcs and which parts we're talking about. All right, let's look at a little bit of a higher level example. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a higher level question. Not too bad, but a little bit challenging. So we have been given arc XY, and we want to know what arc XZ is if we know angle YXZ is 98 degrees. Well, what we have to do here is use indirect calculation. We need to find some intermediate values that allow us to find arc question mark, because we don't know what that can be. So I'm going to do this problem in two different ways, just to kind of show you different ways of thinking about this. I'm going to start by talking about the fact that a circle is 360 degrees. Sorry, my tracing was really bad there. But we can find this major arc YZ by realizing that we have an inscribed angle that's 98 degrees. So arc YZ is 196 degrees. In order to find the arc in question, this purple arc here, XZ, in order to find that arc measurement, we could say, I know most of the way around the circle. I have a 64-degree arc, and a 196 degree arc. If I would add those two together, if I would add these two arcs together, I would get 260 degrees. So therefore, in order to find our question mark, we take the 360, the total circle, and subtract the arcs we already know. I know 260 degrees of it, which means that arc question mark must measure 100 degrees. All right, so this is indirect measurement. Now I said there's more than one way to do this. So I'm going to start this problem over again and look at from a different perspective. So let's get the ink off the page. And some people might think more this way. What if I drew in chord? Oh, it doesn't seem to want to let me do that. I apparently can't draw it with that. Let's use the marker. If I drew in chord YZ and made a triangle. Well, if I did that, this is going to end up being a 32 degree angle. Where I got that from is angle Z, chord ZY and chord ZX cut this 64 degree arc. And an inscribed angle is half the arc it creates. So half of 64 is 32. 98 and 32 is 130 degrees, which means that to complete the triangle, this has to be 50 degrees. Angle Y does, because the angles of a triangle have to add up to 180. And so therefore the arc created with chord YZ and chord YX is a 50 degree angle inscribed on the circle, which would make our question mark be 100 degrees. Some of you are going to look at that and say that's way more complicated. Others of you are going to look at that and say that makes more sense to me. There's more than one way to do a lot of these problems. So either way, you're going to get a 100 degree arc from arc question mark. So our rule today, one simple idea. An inscribed angle made of two chords cuts an arc. The arc it cuts will measure twice the angle on the circle. An inscribed angle is exactly half of the arc it creates. All right, remember, quiz next time. Check, make sure you know how to do everything 10-1 through 10-4. Have a good day.